had 10,000 tongues, it still won't be enough. Narekele mo. Tukuna guamarele. When you heal completely. Narekele mo. Tukuma robi mo. Isi inkendile mo. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. Hey. Nara, nara, narekele, narekele mo. Nara, nara, narekele, narekele mo. So we lift you up, Jesus, lift you up, Jesus. Glorify your name. Hey. To you be all the worship and praise, forever and ever and ever. Ooh. Woo. It's done so much for me, I cannot tell it all. Yeah. Tell it all. If I had 10,000 tongues, still won't be enough, Jesus. Chukuna guamarele. When you hear completely. Chukuma robi mo. Isi inkendile mo. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. What shall I render to Jehovah? He has done so. Hey. And so
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you are joining us from in different parts of the world. I'm excited and I'm glad to welcome you to our final webinar for the year 2022. It's been a very, very beautiful, awesome, and amazing year for us at Clan Initiative. We've had different speakers, we've had different guests, we've had different topics, we've had different, things to consider about environmental sustainability, health, and, different topics that matter to the growth of Africa, Nigeria, and, the world at large. And our guest speaker is here already. I'm excited. And I'd like to appreciate everyone that has, made time to join us from the beginning of this year through our webinar series in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. And I hope you've learned one thing or the other through our webinar series. And today again, we are here with another very, very beautiful topic. And personally, I'm glad that we are wrapping up the year with this topic, and I'm also excited that we have our guest speaker, who is a very, very great leader and someone who has traveled far and wide, pushing things about the environment, environmental sustainability, and leadership and youth involvement across the world. Okay, so you're welcome once again, and I think very quickly I'm going to read through the bio of our guests so that I can bring him up. Thank you very much. Chukudi Sandra, I've made you co-host, so you could also help to admit people when they come. I think it should pop up on the screen of your device, either your laptop or your phone. Okay, so yeah, our guest today is Damilola Balogun, and I'm going to read through his bio very, very quickly. Damilola is a passionate youth, thought leader, lawyer, and international development consultant with over 5 years hands-on experience in advisory, service provision, collaborative research, youth-led advocacy, facilitation of participatory processes, and a track record of meaningful impact on youth, communities, and institutions inclusion in sustainable development affairs. Damilola is a co-founder and chief executive officer of Youth Sustainable Development Network, YSDN, an organization that works with youth and change makers in championing research and innovative grassroots action on the SDGs. Damilola has not only represented and participated at several high-level global governance and sustainability meetings. He has also been featured on several television and radio stations in Nigeria and Africa, speaking on issues of sustainable development leadership, youth development, and inspiring real-life action and impact. Damilola, I'm so excited to have you on our webinar series, particularly the final one for 2022. I've known Damilola for a while, but like I posted a few days ago, I think it was in August that was our first time of meeting in person, and it was a very, very beautiful, event. So thank you so much for honoring our invitation, for coming up today, and yeah, the floor is yours now. You're welcome, Damilola. Thank you. I'm going to spotlight you now.
Hi, Ayomide. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Ayomide, for setting up the conversation. Thank you so much for everything you do with the Cleaner and Healthier Nigeria initiative. I mean, it's a great privilege to be here, and then thank you so much for your kind words, and most importantly, for your invite to share my insights on today's conversation. And a big thank you to everyone that is present here. I'm of course looking forward to learning from everyone, particularly on today's conversation. So it's a privilege to be here again. And thank you so much, Ayo. Thank you for everything you do for the planet, for the environment. And it's in just a matter of time, I'm certain the world is going to hear of your impact largely. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, so the topic before us here is COP27. What is at stake for Africa? So let's dive into the conversation. So we have like different categories of people here. Some people are environmentalists, some people have passion for the environment, some people they work in other fields or other sectors. So let's start to break, let's break the ice. Like, what is COP? Some people in America, they know COP as police. So when they hear the cops, yeah. So what is COP? Can you start by like telling us about what COP is? Then we'll move on from there. Sorry, you're muted, Dami.
Oh, sorry. I said COP as in police might not be far from it, because COP as it means is to ensure that the world leaders are actually held accountable, is to police them to make sure that they hold their decision and their promise practicable and viable as far as the environment is concerned. But yes, on a more deep and serious conversation, COP is Conference of Parties as it stands, Conference of Parties. So there are several Conference of Parties, and all of these Conference of Parties, I'm sure some people would have seen COP15 going on in Montreal in Canada. So they are like, oh, COP27 just finished in Egypt, there's COP15, and so people are not certain as to what is essentially COP. So COP is Conference of Parties. That's what it means, Conference of Parties. And then it came as a result of the Rio Convention in 1992. The Rio Convention talking about sorry, they had to disrupt the light. Just give me a minute to set this up so you can see me All right. Are we good? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear
All
you.
right. Yeah, awesome. So yes, like I was saying, COP is Conference of Parties, and then it emanated from the Rio Convention in 1992, which was focused on building sustainable planets as a result of the Earth Summit that was held then in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil to be specific. So as a result of this convention, the United Nations and its agency agreed to have conference of parties on one, climate change, number two, on biodiversity. So COP27 particularly stands for the 27th session of the United Nations climate change conversation since 27 years ago, if as simple as that it is. So 27 is focused on the 27th edition of Conference of Parties on United Nations climate change. So what's
Awesome.
the conversation? How do we drive it? So if you would do your math very well, if this year is the 27th edition, it means that the first edition was in 1990. That should be 1995, right? 1995. So it started in 1995. And so we had COP1 in 1995, COP2 in 1996, and up to today we're having COP27, which is just in the 27th year as to which the United Nations Conference of Parties are meeting to drive conversation as far as climate change is concerned.
All right, all right. Thank you very much for that. So I hope everyone has gotten a hint about what COP means, Conference of Parties. Yeah, and so this year we are privileged in Africa to have the COP coming to Africa, particularly in Egypt. I think last year was in Glasgow, UK, but here we are like privileged to have it in Africa. So like I know you were part of the COP at Egypt, but I wasn't able to be there. I wish I was there. But yeah, so like what do you think? What were the conversations? Was it really an opportunity for Africa, or it was just like another thing happening for Africa during COP last month, in the month of November?
All right, thank you very much for the question. And I mean, I have a problem with the fact that we have to target African COP. Because when it happened in Glasgow, in the United Kingdom, it was not titled European Cup. And even before then, it happened in Madrid. It wasn't tagged European Cup. So why Africa and we are like African Cup? So, I mean, I have a problem with that name tag with the conference. But just to dive deep into the question, which is the major outcomes. So I think everyone practically who's able to follow through is seeing the great achievement of COP27, which is now known as the Sharm el-Sheikh Implementation Plan. And to be precise, Sharm el-Sheikh is where the conference held in Egypt. So at the end of the day, it's an international law principle that wherever treaties and policies are agreed, they are usually adopted in the name of the place where the conference was held. So I'm sure, like I said earlier, there was the Rio Convention, which held in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. There's the Paris Agreement, which held as a result of as a result of the fact that it was held in France, and that was COP21, pardon me. So all of these things are just normal to be adopted in the name of the place where the conference is held. So the plan or the agreement of COP27 is known as the Sharm el-Sheikh Implementation Plan. And so for Africa, this particular plan, and not just for Africa, I think for all other countries in the global south, there's been clamor as to providing funding for loss and damage for developing countries or countries also known as global south countries. So at the end of the day, it's the general knowledge that a lot of causes of climate change that has affected developing countries is as a result of the constant industrialization and emission of greenhouse gas emissions from the countries in the global north, or otherwise known as developed countries. And so over time, there's been clamor that since you have polluted and you have caused greenhouse gas emission as a result of your development to affect the climate, which is in turn now affecting the development of developing countries and even or countries in the global south. It is important that we pay for it. So we all know that as a result of climate change, there are several issues that happen. There are floods, there's drought, there are like infrastructure displaced, even people are internally displaced. So the essence of this over time has been the fact that there is a need to provide for loss and damage facilities such that people that are most affected, vulnerable countries, are able to benefit from this funding to be able to match up their development. And in the history of Conference of Parties, particularly on climate change, this year, COP27, the 27th edition held in Sharm el-Sheikh, for the first time, agreed that parties are going to provide funding for most vulnerable countries that are most hit by the impact of climate change. That being said, it is then important to also emphasize that being the landmark of the Sharm el-Sheikh implementation plan in Egypt, the conversation actually started in Glasgow, and then it was looking like they were not going to be headway from Glasgow. But over time, countries, you know how international diplomacy works. Over time, countries have actually go around to settle. But for what happened in Glasgow, they were looking forward to even having the conversation further. So to the surprise of everyone in Egypt, the countries in the global north have finally agreed to pay for loss and damage to most countries hit by the impact of climate change. So that's a major landmark as far as COP27 is concerned. And I'm happy to delve deep into more outcomes as we proceed into this conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for shedding more light to that. Before we go to the next question, I know we have the 17 SDGs, like the 17 sustainable goals, and I think they are to be achieved by the year 2030. And 2022 is over. Let me say it's almost over. And in the next few days, or in the next couple of days, we'll be in 2023. Do you think these 17 sustainable development goals, or let's say the goals, it's possible that we achieve them by the year 2030? Or okay, what if we don't get to achieve them? What's next? Or were those some of the things that were highlighted during COP? Or what are your thoughts about the SDGs and 2030?
All right, that's a great question, and thank you so much for that question. So, can the Agenda 2030 be achieved? In my opinion, I think it will be a continuous working. It's important to draw the emphasis on the fact that these are developmental goals. These are developmental goals that are supposed to be achieved by 2030. First of all, that's what the SDG means. So the SDGs stand for Sustainable Development Goals. And so they are goals covering socioeconomic and environmental development of the world at large to be achieved. And because of the way the world operates, we are very much interdependent. So no country is able to achieve or achieve a level of development without the support of other countries. Then it means that there is going to be a constant interaction as to the prosperity of the world and as to the prosperity of the world based on the relationships between the countries and other non-state actors involved.
Oh, so it looks like your line is breaking, Dami. I think we lost him. Hello, Dami, can you hear me?
An example. Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but we lost you at some point. We lost you a bit. Your line was breaking at some point.
Oh, wow. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yes.
All right, just change the direction of my internet there. So great. So as I was saying, for example, the Russia and Ukraine crisis is causing global inflation, and there is the energy crisis coming down with it. And if you're very familiar with the SDGs very well, you know that SDG 7 talks about having access to clean, affordable, and reliable energy. And so we are trying to meet a goal by 2030. And right now, as we speak, there is a global inflation affecting energy supply because of the war between Russia and Ukraine. And it's not just energy. To put in context, Ukraine happens to be the second largest country that produces wheat. And so a lot of countries in Africa, and most especially Northern African countries, depend on Ukraine to have access to wheat. And so because of that war, there is a slow decline in the export of wheat to these countries, which is actually hindering achieving zero hunger by 2030, and is even promoting poverty in a way. So because of the interaction, because of the way the world is built, such that we are supposed to work collectively to achieve this goal, we need everyone's cooperation, everyone's effort, youth, civil society, intergovernmental institutions, young people, name it all. We need to work collectively to achieve this goal. And because of the fact that sometimes we don't get to work collectively, and so we might not be able to achieve this goal by 2030. But of course, statistics and figures shows that there is a gross improvement before post-COVID, before COVID rather. So before COVID, there were certain progress as far as the goals are concerned, but then COVID came, we had the economic breakdown and so much issues revolving around achieving this goal. And now we have the Russian and Ukraine crisis. So while we're trying to take 10 steps, we are getting back 50 steps in reverse, which makes it very difficult to be achieved. But on the long run, I think, in my opinion, that we should see these goals as goals that go beyond 2030, and we need to start working to achieving it. It's important that we as well have a long-term view to build critical policies and infrastructure to further achieve not just these goals for ourselves and the current persons on the planet, but also people that are yet unborn. And that's what underpins the whole essence of sustainable development.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dami. I would also like to know, every year like you said, COP started in 1995, and there have been so many documents, so many agreements, and so many MOU and things like that. And what do you think would be like a practical way for Africa, especially, to translate everything? So many people that traveled to Egypt, so many meetings that happened in Egypt. What do you think would be like the practical way for Africa to translate COP27 into so many actions for us? We can take Nigeria as a case study.
All right, great. That's a very good question. And it's not just for COP27, for all other Paris Agreement, talking about Sharm el-Sheikh implementation plan, the Santiago network on loss and damage, the global goal on adaptation and all that. So all of these treaties and policies, international policies, how can we transform them into impact? That's a great question. So particularly on COP27, because of the loss and damage fund that was created, which a committee is going to be set up from 2023 to see the countries that actually match up to the qualification of being granted this support as being vulnerable. If Nigeria gets to qualify amongst it, I think it's going to be a great benefit if the Nigerian government is willing to actually use this fund properly, because just as you know, in Glasgow, the Nigerian government pledged net zero by 2060. The Nigerian president officially pledged net zero by 2060. So what he's saying essentially with net zero by 2060 is that by 2060, Nigeria's industry, Nigeria as a whole, would be emitting no CO2. That means all of the economy is going to be circular. And then at the end of the day, our energy, most importantly, would be clean, affordable, and reliable. And in the first place, we still don't have access to energy. So it's still a problem of energy access. A lot of people, particularly women in the rural part of Nigeria, still suffer from lack of access to clean cooking facilities. And if all of these are to be achieved by 2060, it is important that two things are done. So one is the fact that let's look at the loss and damage fund that was created. So if we qualify, also bearing in mind that the Nigerian government already said it's going to need over, I think, $2 trillion to meet net zero by 2060. So having funds like this or getting the support from the loss and damage fund can be a good fund to actually match up to net zero by 2060. That is a funding that can help close the gap as far as achieving net zero by 2060 is concerned if the government is serious. Number two, when people know better, they are able to do better. So you cannot want to build a future goal or a future target and the current generation. Can you hear me, please? Sure.
Yeah.
Am I breaking?
No, you're fine.
Right.
You're fine.
So, all right, great. So when people know better, they are able to do better. So you cannot want to build a future goal without making preparation for the people that are even present to be able to achieve this goal, not to talk of those that are yet unborn that will also support in the achievement of this goal. So, it is important that we begin to incorporate climate, environmental sustainability conversations, and even net zero conversations into school curriculum. So from primary school, let them learn about these things, just as some of us here learned, or if not all of us learned about social studies, which is to me not so relevant anyways, but just my opinion. So, incorporating modern day topics that touches on the future into curriculums will go a long way. So if we can have all of these conversations from basic school, we are getting our future people that would help us push towards this goal, begin to think in this line, and they are beginning to build capacity to be able to address this future issue, then we can say we are ready to go. So aside that, from the primary school to the secondary school, so when it comes to tertiary, let's build up real life courses. Let's talk of courses on strategic leadership on sustainable development. Let's talk of courses on environmental and climate sustainability policies, everything touching on green economy, because our plan is by 2060, we want to achieve a green economy. But what are the policies? What are the procedures? What are the path that we are laying down to ensure that these goals are to be achieved? Nothing. It's totally zero. So it's just a promise by 2060, and we get there. However, we get there. If we don't get there, somebody else will pledge something. So I think it's important that we are intentional. And so, in summary, I think to achieve this key outcome of COP27 and even everything touching on net zero that the Nigerian government has pledged by 2060, it's important to build capacity, incorporate educational conversations, topics into this curriculum, into the school curriculums. And number two, let's make use of the available funds that we are able to qualify to get, for example, the loss and damage fund, to match up our future targets. And that's where we can we are on the right path to achieving net zero and even development as a whole. I have another one, but let's keep going. There will still be a time to talk.
Oh, of course, like we are very open. We want to learn as much as we can from you today. So like you can be free to share as much as you can. Awesome. Thanks for that. Let's talk about youth involvement, especially African youths, in things around environmental sustainability. And in COP, I know every year there's always like sponsorship or funding for youths to travel from different parts of the world, different parts of Africa to attend the COP for that year. And yeah, this year, I know quite a number of people. I know you were in Egypt, a couple of other friends too that I know they were also in Egypt. Let's talk about our involvement as youths. Do you think like going to COP every year for us is just an opportunity to like physically represent Africa, or have we been able to like lend our voice, and do we have that kind of platform to share that, oh, this is what is happening, or they just want to have us in number that, oh, African youth are here, so, or they just want us in attendance? So do you think over the years in other parts of the world where COP has happened, do you think we've had the privilege to actually lend our voice, speak our mind, and kind of make change or create impact in all the COP that happened?
All right, thank you very much for that great question. So I think it's important to emphasize that as so many times people want to attend these high-level conferences, sadly, not everyone gets to be present. But I think that unfortunately, it's not everybody that will still be present. So it depends on the perspective as to which you're looking at it, which is one. Number two, for youth participation as a quota, I mean, over time, we've called these people out that these people in quotes that it's not, don't look at pushing youth to have them in these conferences to just fulfill a quota. It's important that you carefully engage with them such that you're able to even use their strong abilities to be able to match up your own value creation as an institution. So that's something that over time that I have constantly said and I've constantly advocated for. And so it is also important that when you're talking of COP, youth engagement, youth participating in COP20, in COPs generally, even COP35 that is yet to come, it's important that we know what we want to do. We have to do real work. We have to do real work. So I think having an advantage is doing something different. So this is just a message to anyone who wants to come to conferences like this and you're taking opportunity. It's important that apart from the crowd, so if your advocacy, I mean, you want to advocate, you are a strong advocate for you're a strong advocate for clean and climate and everything revolving around the energy. It means that you want to build your strength in that and you want to be able to match up with that. That's something that is left for you to decide on your strategy to be able to have an added advantage such that when the time comes, you are easily recommended and you can even attend. That's for advocacy on one part. You want to do project implementation? Did you want to go to the communities to engage with them properly? Do you want to engage? Do you want to have conferences where policies are being marked? It's left for you to decide, but you just have to be able to decide your strong points that can make you stand out from every other person, such that when the time comes, they will know that, no, this person is doing an important work and this person has to be there. So that's just a general advice for some persons that are interested in attending and they're wondering why some people get funding and some don't get funding. Over time, like I said, like I always say, a lot of times I don't go to all these places because I'm a young person. I don't go to COP and tell, oh yeah, I'm youth activist, youth climate activist. So first of all, I engage on the level of being a professional. And then another advantage is that I'm young, so I'm a young professional. I'm not someone who is just coming. So because at the end of the day, we can't be young forever. So when you're 35, 36, 37, are you still young? No, you're not young. So you still remain a professional and your space is still there and you're still very much relevant. So you've been able to sustain relevance over time. And generally speaking about youth participation over time in COP, I think COP27 has made it very clear that youth engagement is becoming more significant when it comes to high-level conferences, and especially the fact that Article 86, 87, and 88 of the Sharm el-Sheikh Implementation Plan recognizes not only youth as critical agents to addressing the issue of climate change, but also recognizes Yungo's statement that was delivered during COP 17. And finally, the first ever Children and Youth Pavilion was present at COP27. So 10 years before this time, young people are hardly seen in conversations like this. But now young people are not only present, they are as well featured on panel conversations to communicate their pressing needs and demands. And they are also able to bring in their perspective as far as addressing developmental agenda. In this case, climate change is concerned. And then finally, we have some young people that are present in the negotiation room as junior negotiators, witnessing how negotiation is going. And then at the end of the day, they are able to learn and they are able to as well teach other persons that come after them. And that is over time becoming the new. But
Oh, sorry.
I think in high-level conferences such as there's been sorry.
Okay, go ahead, go ahead. You were breaking out some points, so I wasn't hearing you, but it's fine now. It's okay now.
Oh yes. So yes. So what I said is over time, because of the key outcomes of COP27, there are issues that in people into high level conversations.
Hello, hello, Dami. Are you still there? Are you there? Hello.
Yeah, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah, I just pick off my camera. So what I said essentially again is that COP27 has shown that young people's participation in high-level conferences is building momentum, and it's only going to get better and better years after years. So there's great progress, and we're happy to see what comes moving forward.
Awesome. Awesome. Nice. Okay, now, so let's connect what you said earlier, like your first answer before this question about the plan for Nigeria in 2060 for net zero emission and youth involvement or youth participation. Like, I'm sure some people are hearing this for the first time, that our nation, Nigeria, has a plan to like go towards net zero emission by the year 2060. Not so many people are aware of that. Now that, yeah, it's there, and youth are very, very, very important to so many things that happen. Let's look at our music industry. Let's look at our entertainment industry in Nigeria. I'm sure youth have been one of the people that have driven so many things that have happened in those spaces. But looking at the environment, which is like a very, very critical and important part of our nation that drives so many, many things, it looks like things are still like dragging. So many people are not aware of it. So what do you think? How do you think we can connect this plan or the outcome of COP27 and youth involvement and merge it together to actually have an impact and a transformation in the coming years, or to even achieve that at that stipulated time?
All right, great question. So it's important again to emphasize that there is little we can do as much as we want to, but we still need government support. So it is important that the government must be willing to prioritize the youth demography when it comes to addressing developmental agenda, which for me, to an extent, is fairly done, or not even up to 30% support. Because I think that there can be more. So it's left to the Nigerian government to decide on how they want to engage young people to drive the agenda. Let's not forget that governments are the ones that represent at these high-level conferences and engagements. They are the ones that prepare the pledges and the policies. They serve as an intermediary between us and all other intergovernmental institutions and intergovernmental gatherings. And so we have to be sure that they are willing to not just just make all these policies, but also drive them in a way that they would amount to something very tangible. And so it boils down to the fact that the Nigerian government must be willing to intentionally engage young people. That I have not seen over time, but we're still doing what we can do. I mean, this is Ayomide Aroshegbe doing what he can do for the beat. I can tell there's little or no government support with what you're doing. You're doing it because you're passionate and you see the value in it. So not just you, I mean, for every person who is here, one way or the other, is connected to making sure not just Nigeria is a better place, but the world at large. And so there is a need again to have government support to concentrate all of this effort intentionally to drive change. So in my opinion, if the government does not become intentional to work towards integrating young people into these programs that they go to present and make pledges as they wish in intergovernmental gatherings, it then means that there's little or no progress we can make. So all of our efforts will just be scattered here and there. So while Ayomide is doing what he can do, Bustari, for example, Bustari Jamaldeen is doing what he or she can do. Sandra is doing what she can do somewhere. Maureen Akeredolu is doing something she can do somewhere. Everyone is just going to be doing what they can do somewhere, and then, but we need government support to be able to draw the maps and ensure that everything consolidates and adds up to a tangible growth. But regardless, I think young people, not just in Nigeria, but in the world at large, are doing incredible work. And what is needed is just the governmental support, particularly speaking from the Nigerian reality.
Awesome, nice. Before I open the floor for questions from other participants, one more question that I have that I would ask you is, were there like personal takeaway or learnings for you during COP27 that you would like to share? And also, like, what do you think is at stake for Africa? Just talking about the topic of our webinar today, like post COP27, what's at stake for Africa? So were there like personal learnings that, you were so motivated and intrigued about these learnings? And what do you think is at stake for Africa after COP27?
Okay, so great question. What is at stake for Africa is that the destiny of Africa lies in its own hands. That's one thing I've learned over time, even something that really got me motivated during the conference. So we have to be at the driving seat of our development. So while it is okay that we believe that we emit less, and so some set of individuals should support and pay for what they have caused, the damage that they have caused, it's also important that we take charge. Taking charge means that we make use of our available resources, that human and natural resources that we have, to drive change by ourselves. So we need to go from point A to point C. And to get to point C, it's important that we need to move from point A to point B first before we can approach point C. But we are at a state where we are still at point A and we are calling on people to drag us to point C. It is important that we use our own strength, in this case, our resources available, to address some of these things. So if we're able to get to point B, they take us serious and we are able to meaningfully engage to drive down as far as point Z, if that makes sense. So what one major important learning for me is that for Africa to develop and to address developmental issues, talking of climate change, it's important that we must be at the forefront of delivering our own prosperity. And so when the reality is totally different. We have to understand that while the United States or a lot of countries in the global north to a level have developed, they are addressing the issue of climate. But for us, our reality is that we are still not developed. And so we have to address the issue of climate. So while that reality is different, it's important to tailor policies and project implementation into strategies such that we are addressing the issue of our development and we are able to address climate concerns that affect our territory and even the world at large. So again, to put a clear example, we're talking of climate change. It's a global threat. It's affecting the world. But Belgium, on one hand, has sustainable transportation and even to a great extent, sustainable agriculture. And the GDP of Belgium is higher than that of Nigeria. So while Nigeria and Belgium are having to deal with the issue of climate change, Nigeria has to understand that Belgium, to a great extent, is developed. So we cannot just address the issue of climate from the Nigerian reality. We also have to put in means and measures to address our development, which is, first of all, having sustainable transportation, and then addressing the issue of climate, or putting in policies and frameworks that can achieve the two simultaneously, as opposed to Belgium that is only being affected by the impact of climate change. So that makes it very clear that whatever it is, our development is in our hands and we need to drive it. And finally, African youth now more than ever are taking charge. They're doing significantly well. And so this is just a message to every young person out there. I mean, whatever you're doing, don't stop. this is not to be motivational because it's just the reality. African youth are having the opportunities more than ever. There are so many opportunities that you get because you're just being African. You see so much speaking, conference opportunities. People are willing to sponsor whatever you're doing because you are from Sub-Saharan Africa or Global South. So there's a need to promote that development. So it's important that you're intentional and you're able to capitalize on that to not just drive the development of the world and your country, but your own personal development as well. So those are my key two learnings as far as COP27 is concerned.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dami. I think I would like to open the floor for questions so that anyone that has question, and I have someone very important on the call. My US mom is here on the call. Thank you so much, Sue, for joining. Yeah, thank you so much for making time out of your busy schedule for joining. I really appreciate that. So, does anyone have a question for Dami while we start looking at wrapping up? Does anyone have a question about COP, about Africa, about Nigeria, about climate for Dami while we are planning to wrap up? Any other questions or any other concerns or contributions or comments? Yeah, comments, questions, concerns, contributions from this topic or from this call. Yeah, while we wait for probably people that have questions. Okay, there's a comment here. Okay, hi Dami, thanks for sharing. Okay, so Dami, I know that you were also in Morocco. I don't know if you are back already, but like, what were the learnings from your trip to Morocco also that you think would be beneficial for us to learn or know about on this call?
All right. Yes. Yeah, I'm back actually. That's only why I'm sorry. That's the only way you see that life to be disrupted in the midst of my meeting.
Okay.
That's a clear reason that I'm back. So yeah, I'm back. So what I went to do in Morocco was to just give my COP27 outcomes, what my perspectives and progresses and everything revolving around COP27 on the general agreement by the Conference of Parties itself. And then number two was to just talk about youth participation in COP27. So largely everything I've said here is what I said back there. But a major thing I learned as far as Morocco, my trip to Morocco is concerned, is that, again, young people are really championing change. This was all of this project, the one that was organized in Morocco, was largely done by young people. And so it was young people participating, young people showing innovation, talking about how they want to address the issue of climate and energy justice. And so we saw great ideas. Now they're in incubation. Some of these participants that got qualified will be going back to Morocco in January to have their accelerator programs. And so there's just opportunities out there for people to take part and shaping up their innovation or their project that they work on. So my major message from that is, as a young person, now more than ever, there are opportunities. It's just for you to search and position yourself to have these opportunities. I'm doing that every day. I'm still a young person. I'm doing that every day. And then it's what it is, right? Because we're always scared of failure, but failure is not final. It's not final. What matters most is where we are able to reach. And I'm not even trying to be motivational with you. Failure is never final, because failure in its first place is a noun. And when a word is a noun, it doesn't change. Nigeria is a noun, it doesn't change. Do you get? Lion is a noun, it doesn't change. So when you say failure is a noun, it doesn't change. So it means you're a failure from the very start to the end. But we have a lot of people that have failed and they've emerged. So you just have to see it as a stepping stone to bigger things. Whereas failing to success is what it is, which is the verb in itself. So I mean, there's still a lot to do, but regardless, opportunities are out there. Let's position ourselves to develop not just our countries, but of course the world at large.
All right. Thanks so much, Dami. We have questions rolling in now. There's a question here from Busari Jamaldin. Please, sir, the Nigerian Climate Change Act introduced recently, how has it impacted the current state of Nigerian climate change action so far, sir?
That's a very good question. I'll tell you, it has not impacted anything. It has not. I'll tell you the origin of that document. So the Nigeria Climate Bill, before it became an act rather, has been around. And so it's funny because it was just a few days to COP26 rather. And so Nigeria had to give its report. That's the nationally determined contribution. That's in line with the Paris Agreement, what member states are doing to address the impact of climate change. And so you're supposed to come and give reports of the progress of it in COP 2026. So at the end of the day, the Nigerian government felt that signing that bill to become an act would be something tangible they can project at the international scene. And so again, because of that intention, which is like what it is, there's really no significant direction towards that act. Because talking about that act, it talks about even creating a trust fund to address the issue of climate. But till today, we don't know anything about that. And not even so many people understand this act itself. Not so many people are aware of the Nigerian Climate Change Act in the first place. So at the end of the day, when we make laws and we make policies, it is important we create awareness about it. Nigeria being a beautiful country as it is, with so much languages and ethnicity, it is important that we try as much as possible to take note of on explaining and documenting some of these documents to people that are at the local level that would also drive the change that we want to see. We also have to carry them along. And the essence of the SDG itself is to leave no one behind. So in my opinion, the Nigerian Climate Change Act hasn't done so much. First of all, there is a need to create awareness for people to understand their roles and what they are supposed to do. It's only when that is done, we can say we want to be carefully achieving these things. And that's a point for anybody who is here, who is interested in it. You can have a look at it, you can have a conversation around it, you can engage more people, you can create awareness about what the act stands for and their role in this regard. That in a way is helping you stand out as whatever you're doing as a young person.
Awesome. Thanks. Busari, I hope Dami has answered your question. Then we have a comment from Sutida, my US mom. She says, great questions and thorough. Oh, Busari, we can hardly hear you. Your line is breaking.
Yeah. Thank you very much. He has answered my question.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so Sue says, great questions and such thorough, interesting answers. I appreciate hearing your perspectives and experiences from COP. Busari has another question. Secondly, sir, how best do you think net zero can be achieved in Nigeria at the proposed time? Yeah, that's another question for you, Dami.
All right, thank you very much for that question. Yes, I think, yes, as I was earlier when I stated, I touched on net zero. So I think it's important that, again, we try to start creating education around net zero. Again, my awareness is important from this part of the world we are in Nigeria, to be specific, because it's only when people know better, they are able to do better. You go to high-level conferences to pledge commitment, and you come back home, the people that are supposed to help you achieve this commitment don't even know of this commitment in the first place, talk less of their role. So it's important that whatever pledges and commitments and even policies and documents that you want to push towards development, it's important that you carry your citizens along. It's important that you create an environment for them to understand what it is, their roles towards it, and create that environment for them to be able to match up with the reality of what you envisage. So speaking of net zero, to me, you just go pledge net zero by 2060. as I speak to you now, one major stand I know of is the Nigerian Transition Plan that was launched together with the Sustainable Energy for All with the Nigerian government on how to reach net zero. Then it still talks about engaging stakeholders for funding. But the first thing is you don't ask for funding, you try to create opportunities for people within the country first to be able to leverage on these things and they can be able to drive change. So once that environment is created, you can then seek funding because you know there's already an ongoing work and project as far as that particular goal is concerned. So it's only when that environment is created that people are beginning to drive change, then you can say you want funding more to even take the change you're driving to another level. But in the first place, people don't know about these things. So it's important that awareness is key. So if we're going to achieve net zero, it's a lot of people don't even know what you're talking about when you say net zero. Do you want to go to a market woman in Lagos or in Port Harcourt to tell her that net zero? I mean, we have to speak in the true language that we understand to drive development. So awareness is important in whatever means that the government deems fit to engage with people. So in the first place, they have to know how this thing touches their life, the importance of it, and how they can address it. And we can say we are ready to move.
Awesome. I hope we have time. We have so many questions and comments coming in now. Another one from Maureen Akeredolu Ali. She says that in addition to sensitization sessions like this one, and what you mentioned about our school curriculum being upgraded to include green education, I understand that it is not, I understand this is not an easy thing. How else can one easily build professionalism in this space?
Okay. All right. So right now that you have little or no support, it's left to you to be able to build your own development yourself. So again, it's only someone that has blood that can donate blood. For you to be able to effectively communicate value, you have to build value yourself. And so it's important that to build professionalism in this space, as far as addressing developmental goals, climate change, energy transition is concerned, it's important that you're able to build this professionalism yourself. That is, you have to know about these things. You have to take courses, you have to learn more, you have to engage in conversations such as this. And that way you're sure of building your own professional skills yourself and your professional expertise. Maybe going as far as even taking a master's or a PhD if it's something that interests you. And that way you become someone of value to the conversation and you cannot be left alone as far as conversation is concerned. So I think it's important for you to hold your personal development and professional development goals and targets to yourself and build it upon yourself to make yourself achieve these things, as there are little or no support in this regard. And only when you are able to reach this goal, you keep getting higher and higher and getting more opportunities to engage more. And then you're building more knowledge, you're building more network, and you can then pass it back to people that are also needed. So that way you're building a chain of impact, which on the long run, you're doing extremely well and you become an important aspect of the conversation.
Nice. The next question, thirdly, sir, this is from Busari again. Sanction for climate change misconduct is not stated in the Climate Change Act, sir. So does this mean the Climate Change Act is just a toothless bulldog?
Actually, we have to understand that when we're talking about that, it's important to emphasize that what is the intention of the act itself? What's the intention of the act? So if you're able to clearly understand the intention of the act, you'll be able to answer if it's just a toothless bulldog that you refer to it. So at the end of the day, it's also important that we understand that while it is important to push towards these strategic goals that we set to meet, it's also important that we have like a level playing ground for people to be able to carefully engage. So I wouldn't know the perspective as to which the lawmakers did not make the sanction clearly stated in the Climate Change Act. I think it's also important that, again, it goes to the intention of the act. So if that is missing, we then have to question the intention of the act. Is it just to fulfill an international obligation or to actually drive the impact of climate change? I think with the question, the answers are very obvious.
Hello.
Yeah, I've answered that.
Okay, nice. Awesome. Sorry, like so many questions. I think this should be like the last 3 or 4 that we have. This is another one from Maury. Secondly, apart from non-profits or CSOs, who else can hold the government accountable with regards to success or failure of policies?
The people.
Okay.
We have power. So we're not going to vote them in because they messed up the plan to develop our environment. So you and I have the power. Forget that they say we don't have the right to win the election and all that, which is true. I understand the reality, but we have the power to tell them no. We have the power to tell them that this thing you're doing doesn't make sense. So the electorate largely have the power. And then the elections are coming next year. Decide whether or not they've met up your expectations. If they've not met up your expectations, you have the right to turn them down. While that might be difficult because I'm a Nigerian and I speak from the point of reality, it's also important that we cannot overemphasize that it is important that we begin to take into the fact that there is power in our vote. I don't mean to sound political. If we really want to address this problem of Nigeria, climate change, and maybe just other socioeconomic inequalities, it's important that we know that these people in the first place are our servants. We elected them to represent us, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And so to address these issues, it's important that we in ourselves have to have a stake in governance. So there is little we can do as CSOs, as private sectors, because at the end of the day, government makes policy. So just to say, for example, Maureen is someone who is passionate about climate change, which I think she is. She goes into governance, or she gets into government. She becomes a key stakeholder in governance. And then Mr. Ayomide, being the executive director of Cleaner and Healthier Initiative, and Healthier Environment Initiative, is able to relay some of these messages to her. She's going to be able to directly plug in policies and create an enabling environment because this is something she's aware of. Yeah. So what happens a lot of time is that the people that represent us are not aware of this, our pressing needs and concerns, and they're not aware of our reality, so it doesn't work out. So we ourselves, we need to go into government. We need to vote and be voted for to drive change. We can't run away from it if we really want a tangible difference.
Awesome. Okay, so the last 2 questions. And lastly, sir, I have great interest in the climate change action. In fact, I am planning to write my project on it, sir. Can I have a direct chat with you, sir? Okay, so this is personal. So maybe Dami is going to drop his email or contact for Busari later. Then the last question or comment from Chukudi. The 27th conference of the parties to the United Nations Framework on Climate Change, COP27, that took place in the Egyptian coastal city of Sharm el-Sheikh, concluded with the historic decision to establish and operationalize a loss and damage fund. Welcoming the decision and calling the fund essential, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that more needs to be done to drastically reduce emissions now. We can and must win this battle for our lives, he concluded. Thank you so much, Chukudi, for your comments. Awesome. Okay, so Busari, that is Dami's email address. So you can send him an email. You can reach out to him for further conversation about climate change. And I'm sure you would learn so much from him. He's an international professional. All right, so yeah, I'm not sure we have any other comments. Okay, there's one more stuff here. Okay, Toluwani. Okay, thank you so much, Dami, for shedding light on the COP27. It was interesting to learn. I'm sure she wanted to learn or hear how the Ukraine versus Russian war is affecting the supply of wheat in North Africa, and how countries are interdependent on each other. It is also inspiring to know that youth were present at the COP27 and contributed to panel discussions. As an aspiring medical student, I'm learning that I can engage my classmates also to be more aware of global health issues and volunteer on mission trips to address public health issues in our local communities, e.g. cleaner water projects, fitness or nutrition classes, cigarette cessation classes, etc. Just sharing my thoughts. Awesome, that's nice. Thank you so much for your comments, Tuluani. All right, thank you so much, Dami, for coming and for taking time to answer so many questions. And it's our final webinar for 2022, and we are very, very grateful to God. We're very, very grateful to the team of Client. I'm personally grateful to the team of Client Initiative and to everyone that has always been a participant, like consistent participants, like Toluani, Maureen, and so many other people. So thank you so much for riding with us and journeying with us through the year 2022. And I'm sure the year 2023 is going to be very, very awesome. Dami, we'd like to have you again next year, I believe. All right. So thank you, everyone. We're grateful for coming. Thank you so much, Sue. Thank you for making our time to participate here today. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. So have a wonderful rest of the evening. Have a wonderful rest of the day, wherever you are in the part of the world. Thank you. Happy holidays. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye, bye, bye.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome.